back live in the studio here, high on the hill, Atlanta, Lazy Row. Viewpoint is the program. Our guest today, representatives of the Abraham Lincoln Memorial Rehabilitation Center for one of, is that the exact correct word, Mr. Mourning?
We are the Rehabilitation Services Department at LMH, yes.
Now, you've had a few minutes to think over whether I was trainable or educable. Did you have an answer for that?
I do. I thought about that. And I've known Mr. Gossett for several years now, and he's everywhere that I tend to go. And he behaves like a young man, and I think that he is very trainable, and he has the ability to learn anything that he wishes to learn at this point.
You did well answering.
That's just like my mother wrote that.
Yeah.
She didn't know what she was doing when she left that. Miss Green, you're saying that there very quietly, like a proper young lady.
I was trying to avoid the mic.
No, seriously, as a trainee, what prompted you to get into this profession? And it certainly is that. The net result of folks who work in the profession like you do certainly enhance the well-being and the lifestyles of everybody who gets the benefit of your efforts. What prompted you to get into this profession, Miss Green?
As many people might know from Lincoln High School sports, I played sports for several years, and I grew interested in the medical field. So I kind of combined the two and ended up with physical therapy. And I think it's going to prove something I'm very passionate about.
Well, you made a wise selection. We're glad to have you aboard here as a trainee, and I know that you're like a sponge with working with these folks here. You have a full day.
That's right. They're taking good care of me.
Yeah, I'm sure of that. There might be some people out there in the ether world who would like to ask a question or have a comment about services they have received there. 648-5510. And don't worry if you have a little complaint. They can definitely handle that and answer your problems. So 648-5510 if anybody has any questions. Go ahead, Judith K.
Well, I was wondering, especially today, I'm thinking about arthritis. Is that a big contributing factor to people having to have joint replacements and people having to take advantage of the pool?
Definitely so in the pool. Lower extremity, ankle, knee, and hip pretty much are the big ones. And then low back pain are what drive a lot of people into the pool. Having the buoyancy of that water,
yes.
Water makes you float. For most people, some are sinkers. But water makes you float. So when you're standing in the water, the buoyancy of the water is pushing you up, so it's reducing the stress on those joints. So you can walk and exercise in the pool and reduce your body weight, 40, 50, 60%, depending on the depth of the water that you're in.
Some of us run around here with chronic lower back pains. As get a little older, it gets a little worse. That type of therapy, a lot of us, if we're trying hard, we'll go out and work out on a regular basis. You have to be careful how you do that. You just can't lift these 300-pound weights. I couldn't lift 300 pounds if I was in good shape. But seriously, is there a program wherein those with chronic lower back pains could be a part of the therapy? Would that be referred to your department by their physicians and then work out from there? For instance, at that point in time, if you qualified for that, you could go in on a regular, as you suggested, at $40 a month to go in there on schedule?
Absolutely. If you have chronic back pain and you've tried other things and having therapy on land or exercising at the rec or wherever you may choose to exercise just is too painful for you, you come see us. If we see that you can't do these things on land because it's too painful, we'll throw you in the pool. A lot of times the pool, that buoyancy, reducing the weight bearing will help you to exercise and get stronger while you have less pain. And that's the whole thing that keeps us from exercising typically is pain. And then when you're done, if it works for you, then that's the perfect time to continue that home exercise program in our bridge program, which is the $40 a month. We really wanted people to have an avenue of continuing on, because to just kick them out the door into the cold winter with no follow-up is hard if the pool really did work for you. And there's no other facility in town that'll it'll let you do that on a regular basis.
Some of us get to be what is known. Dizzy Dean used to call it a pinch runner. We get a pinched nerve there, and then that will be, manifests itself very prominently for a while, and ultimately it'll go away. Does this type of therapy then address that symptom?
It can. If it's really acute, we may choose to do other things to try and help you to move a little bit better and decrease your pain. But if we can't get through that with the normal things we try, we would definitely put you in the pool. And what sometimes works very well for that, we put you in the deep end of the pool and put floats under your arms, weights on your legs, and that kind of is a hanging traction. So the weight is pulling you down from the feet, but the floats are pushing you up from the top, so you get that separation of the spine and slow stretching of the muscles in between. So
what would that do for someone who has osteoporosis?
It's very gentle. Would not affect them.
No, I mean, wouldn't that be beneficial to kind of help them straighten up?
At that point, you're probably not going to get any straightening from that type of condition. You really need to be stronger. And for osteoporosis, your balance needs to be good to keep you from falling. Your muscles need to be stronger, but it's not going to necessarily take anybody who's currently bent over or crooked in the spine and straighten them out.
What about people who slouch, for lack of a better word, because of back surgeries? Now, would that help them? It would help them. Erect?
It would help them to get in and become stronger and rely on and get stronger muscles, so you can have your muscles supporting your spine, so you can be more upright.
You call it a warm water pool, and indeed, it is warm water. What is the object of having such warm water?
We want to have warm water because cold water and arthritis typically are like oil and water. They don't mix together. The warm water helps the arthritic patients or patients with pain just to help them to relax, helps to take some of the pain away, helps them to move a little bit better. And you very well know that if you're arthritic, on a 90-degree day, you move much better than you do on a 30-degree day.
Yeah, right.
In all these retirement areas, they have groups of older ladies. They always call themselves inevitably the Aquabelles or something like that in retirement areas, and they get together on a regular basis and do the very thing that certainly not as professionally as you do here at the hospital, but that's a great thing for those people who engage in that kind of activity.
We were going to, before today, we were thinking about talking a little bit about concussion. And my friend's grandson plays ball in college, and he did, in fact, manage to get himself some concussions, plural. And they've developed a special helmet that he had to wear. Do you see a lot of people who have had concussions, and is athletics the reason most of the time?
Typically, yes, for athletics, but not always. We have two athletic trainers, one at the high school and one at Lincoln College, and they see the majority of the concussions. We try and do a preseason computerized test on all of the athletes, and then if they are concussed during sport, we can do a follow-up test, and that will tell us whether they're going to be able to go back to play in their sport. If they're not ready, we don't send them back, because if you send them back too early, you can risk what's called second impact syndrome, which can be very, very devastating to the point of a fatality if you send a kid back too early. And what people don't realize is a concussion is a brain injury. If you bust up your ankle and it's black and blue and you can't walk on it, the coach says, fine, go sit. You bust up your brain, it's black and blue on the inside, you can't see that. But the coach puts you back in a lot of times because it's not a visible injury. And so our trainers are out there to say if these kids are having any symptoms, they cannot go back to play. And they've done a very good job of holding the kids out this year and testing and retesting and making sure they're ready to go back to play at a safe level.
There's
In the
lots
West-
of life left over after football.
Yeah, and that's
yeah,
what, and the big thing is, and what I would tell parents and grandparents out there, if your kid is demonstrating any signs of headaches, cognitive dysfunction, memory loss, blurred vision, dizziness, anything like that, and they've had their head hit, it's a concussion. Getting your bell rung, back in the day when Bill played, getting your bell rung was nothing. Nowadays, it's a concussion. It's got to be evaluated, and you have to pull that kid out until they can be evaluated and make sure they are safe to go back in.
And
Alex
in
Carrick's-
boxing sport, they called it punch drunk.
Yeah, and and what they now know is those were concussions, and you find that the post effect of having multiple concussions is devastating. You get these NFL linemen who are having depression, financial issues, suicidal issues.
Yes.
And it's becoming more and more common. They all have, when they do autopsies, they find that they all have a very similar brain as to that of an Alzheimer's patient. But this is trauma induced, and every time you have a concussion, you're inducing more trauma. And the kids who suffer the concussions are much more likely to develop these long-term problems because their brain is still developing. The brain doesn't mature till it's 23, 24, in some cases even
Why are you looking at me?
72.
longer than that.
Look right over at me, Miss Green.
And sometimes longer than that, but you don't see these devastating effects in the NFL players as much. All those effects take place early on, and then by the time they're playing in the NFL or college, their brains have matured. The concussions are still bad, but the permanent effects are done when they're more so when they're younger.
And I think what the parents need to know too, what Todd was talking about, that the athletic trainers are doing with where they screen the kids before they start playing, before they've had a concussion. The new computerized system that they're using is very individualized, and that's why they're doing it beforehand. And that way, when they retest them, they're not retesting them against other people's scores and other people's outcomes on that test. You're testing them against themselves. So it's much, much more reliable to know for that athlete, what kind of trauma they've had, because you're comparing them to themselves.
Well, how can any prize fighter then have any degree of sanity when he retires or gets his bell rung too many times?
Well, I think Muhammad Ali is probably a good example
You
of
think
that.
his fighting is an example
I think
of
it
what
probably
happened
has
to him?
something to do, yes.
Do you?
I saw him once outside the White Sox ballpark, and he really wasn't aware of his. He just wasn't aware of his surroundings.
Isn't that
It was
awful?
a sad thing to see.
And you mentioned athletics is our biggest source of those, yes. But car accidents, and even you don't even have to hit your head to have a concussion. If you get hit from behind and you go forwards and backwards, the brain will rattle around in your skull, and that is enough to cause concussion.
It is.
A terrible example would be our military boys who, in the vicinity of IED explosions and that type of thing. That's just a terrible thing to see.
Yeah, my son fell at school, was climbing on some kind of climbing contraption and lost his grip, caught his leg, and went down and hit on his back, and he hit his head, and my wife brought him out to me, and his eyes were glassed over, and we checked him out, and everything checked out okay, but I'm positive he had a concussion, so we shut him down. And sometimes if your kids have concussions, you've got to shut them down. You may have to take them out of school for a couple days. You may have to put them in a dark room. The brain needs to rest, and it needs to you need to take away their cell phones, take away their texting, take away their internet, take away the television. Get that brain activity to shut down so it can start to heal up. And that's pretty drastic when you take away kids' cell phones.
Oh, I know. But when we
immensely
were
drastic.
raising kids, Bill and I, we really weren't very much aware, I don't think, of concussions. And my kids were pretty active. But it wasn't something we ever thought about.
No, it's just really becoming more and more. And really the NFL is driving this now.
Yes.
Because their players
Ironically.
are the ones that are having the most severe problems later in life. So they really started to look at it, and they're finding that these kids who start playing football really young, that cumulative trauma over the years it doesn't do them any good.
The military. Have you ever seen victims of military injuries in your practice here?
If I recall, in the time that I've been here, I think we've had one.
Is that right?
Yes, and he had I think he'd had therapy out east for a while, and then came here, and I'm not sure if he went back out there or what, but we saw him for a very short period, yeah.
That's lasting results of our foolishness in involving wars all over hell and back. It has been forever, We've become more sophisticated my goodness gracious, in the First World War, they called it shell shock. And I remember a couple around here that definitely you could tell that they had a problem. And then as we moved along, medicine got a lot more sophisticated, and there are a lot of ways to treat that now. But the residuals of these wars are leaving a terrible toll on our young people, men and women.
Jim and Bill and I would probably remember Alex Karras. He was a professional football player and funny. And he said at one time that when you'd, quote, get your bell rung, that the trainer would come up to you and say, "What day is it?" And you'd say, "Yellow." And he'd say, "Yes, you're fine."
Which reminded me real quickly of a card I got not too long ago. So it was these three old codgers walking down the beach. And one of them says, "Boy, it's sure windy." And the other guy says, "No, it's Thursday." And the third guy says, "No, so am I. Let's go have a beer." We're really lucky to have the facilities that we have here in rehab. I don't care whether you're a younger person or a codger or codgerette, as the case may be. To have these facilities available is a remarkable thing for a community of this size. Not only the physical plant, but the obvious professionalism of those who render these services to us. And Miss Green, I take my hat off to you for having this as a goal for our profession. Not going to be fulfilling for you, but as these folks do with patients that walk out the door, make a huge impact in their lives as they move along. Now, Miss Busby, did you have anything before we?
I just want to thank them, and it would be interesting to know how many people you've served in rehab since it began, since its inception.
Well, I can tell you, last year, from the beginning of October last year through the end of September, we saw over 14,000 visits through our department.
Think about that.
Yeah.
Isn't that amazing? That's a miracle. And thanks for all you do for me and all my friends.
You're welcome.
You're welcome.
Before we close, I want to ask one quick question, rather salient question. I believe failures would be a result of people not following through, not having the will to follow through on what you're asking them to do. Would that be fair to say?
It can be a component, definitely. But we try, if we feel that we cannot or have not helped that person in the way they expected or met the goals that we had set for them, that we don't just let them go, that we refer them back to their physician, and hopefully maybe if they need to go to a specialist or something, if they're needing more intervention than what we can give them. We don't want to just leave people that physical therapy may not have been the right course of treatment for them, but we try to move them on to another option that might find them relief.
Really appreciate your time this morning, folks. Hopefully those out there in the ether world learn something a little bit more about what we can do over at Abraham Lincoln Hospital in our therapy department. We always try to close Viewpoint with a quote or two from somewhere. I found one from Mark Twain. He said that's germane to the subject matter. Mark said, "Be careful about reading health books. You may die of a misprint." Thank you very much for Viewpoint.